Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician and this is Holomancer.
Also, Chief Investigative Reporter Dora joined us this evening.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop. Guys, today I propose to discuss the most profitable decks for moving up the ladder. In the comments under the previous video, your viewers suggested creating a new algorithm to determine the decks that have the most value. You've been using math for a long time to determine the best cards to craft, the best packs to buy, and many other things, but you've never used your methods to research decks. How about filling in the gaps? Can you rank the best decks in terms of cost and performance?
This is a great idea. Our viewers have always been our main inspiration to create something completely new. This time as an experiment, we decided to create an efficiency factor, which allowed us to identify the best budget decks. This video will help you significantly increase the number of available archetypes in Hearthstone and give you more tools to effectively move up the ladder.
Our simple formula consists of two factors that equally influence the result: the cost of the deck and the win rate. To get a positive value, the deck must have a win rate of 50% to 70%, and at the same time, the total cost of all collectible epic and legendary cards should not exceed 10,000 dust. This value is commensurate with 5 legendary and 5 epic cards in the deck. Here are 3 examples. If a deck consists only of collectible common and rare cards from standard expansions and at the same time has a win rate of 70%, then its efficiency factor will be 100%. Here's the second scenario. If the cost of crafting high-rarity collectible cards is 10,000 dust and the deck has a 50% win rate, then its efficiency factor will be 0%. And finally, in cases of negative win rate and too high cost of crafting, the efficiency factor will have a negative value. It is also worth noting that we took the data from the 2 most popular game statistics aggregators. For calculations, we took the total win rate of builds from all ranks and additionally studied the effectiveness of strategies on the road to legend rank.
In other words, the cheaper the deck and the better the result it shows on the ladder, the more points it will receive. This is very clear, but why don't you take into account the cost of crafting common and rare cards?
The duplicate protection system makes obtaining all common and rare cards practically free. I created a new account a few weeks ago and collected a fairly large collection of commons and rare cards. Yes, I'm still missing some key low rarity cards, but my collection is growing day by day. But for any active player, getting a collection of all the low rarity cards is incredibly easy.
It is also worth noting that in Hearthstone there is no direct relationship between the cost of a deck and its effectiveness. Decks that consist only of legendary cards are traditionally a meme. In the metagame, there are almost always budget decks that demonstrate impressive efficiency. Developers are guided by a different logic. Aggressive decks are often cheap, while control decks can require a large investment.
Guys, I suggest starting our review with Whizbang. This unique legendary card replaces the entire deck.
Of course we can't ignore one of the most fun and popular tools in the game. Unfortunately, the card lies at the bottom of our list. A week after the nerf, the overall effectiveness of 11 random decks is 39% at all ranks, but closer to legend this figure drops to 30%. These data are based on statistics from 53,000 games.
Despite extremely low win rates, some decks are very effective even at high ranks, while others are hopelessly weak. Let's get down to harsh reality. The efficiency factor for Whizbang decks is only 15%. The only advantage is their low cost. This is a terrible option for rational investing. Next on the list is Priest. It was extremely difficult for us to find cheap decks for a class that is also represented at high ranks. The most budget option is Overheal strategy, which consists of 3 legendary and 2 epic cards. The total cost of high rarity cards is 5,600 dust, which is quite expensive and comparable to buying 50 packs, and all you can get for this cost is a win rate of around 53%. Fortunately, the deck's performance does not decrease at high ranks, but all this data cannot be considered representative enough, since it is based on less than 200 matches. Overall, this is a very niche archetype that sits rather outside of the meta. We tried to find alternative builds that used fewer legendary cards, but we failed. The efficiency factor of this deck is only 30%. This means that the deck is unreasonably expensive for its win rate, but at the same time it is the best option for the Priest in terms of cost to effectiveness ratio. If you have all the high rarity cards, you should try this deck.
Next on the list is Druid. The class experiences the same difficulties as the Priest. current archetypes are extremely expensive and are virtually inaccessible to new players and even difficult to access for active players. This Dragon Druid build is the only budget deck we could find for you. The cost of the deck is 1 legendary card and 4 epic cards, which is a fairly budget option. The deck is slightly more popular than the Priest build. At high ranks, the effectiveness of the deck also does not decrease, but less than 1,000 games is not the most representative indicator. Most often in the metagame you can find a very expensive Highlander version of the archetype. On the screen you can see the most popular legendary cards that have been replaced. The deck's efficiency factor is 42%. It's not good enough but not bad either. Next in line is Rainbow Mage. To craft a deck you will need 2 legendary and 3 epic cards. The efficiency factor of this deck is 46%. An important advantage is the fact that the basis for the deck can be obtained by new players on a special reward track for beginners. The average win rate of the deck is 57%, but closer to legendary rank it decreases slightly. These results are based on over 1,000 matches. The replaced card in this build is Khadgar. If you have this card in your collection, you can create a slightly more effective and significantly more popular version of the archetype. But this isn't the only mage deck on the list.
The win rate of this version of Aggro Paladin also decreases closer to legendary rank and is slightly more than 50%. The main advantage is the cost of the deck, since among the legendary cards you only need Zilliux, which is the best legendary card and is most likely to be in your collection. Cost is the deck's most important benefit. The efficiency factor is 49%. The replaced card in this build is Toy Captain Dareem.
Death Knight also doesn't have a full budget build, but the Plague archetype is one of the free decks for new and returning players, potentially making this build significantly cheaper. An important advantage of the deck is the average win rate of 64%, but it significantly reduces closer to legendary rank. Data is based on 49,000 matches. This is the most expensive deck on our list, but at the same time it is a full-fledged meta build that is actively used in competitive play and does not need any modifications or replacements. Moreover, this is the most popular Death Knight build over the past week. Another meta archetype is Spell Damage Shaman. The nominal cost of this popular build is only 800 dust, which means you only need 2 epic cards. Alternate versions of the archetype use the Overdraft spell and the Golganet, but their effectiveness are not that different. The win rate remains approximately the same at all ranks up to Legend, but still it is not very impressive. The efficiency factor of this version of the archetype is 54%.
The efficiency factor for the Rogue deck is slightly higher. This experimental deck has become a full-fledged part of the metagame in just a week. Stealth Rogue only uses 1 trading card and its Zilliux again. The basic game plan is to deal damage using the legendary mech and its gradually increasing stats plus keep it in stealth with Magnetic's synergy. This build is the most popular plus cost-friendly and quite effective. The win rate of the deck remains stable at all ranks. Sue Hunter is one of the best archetypes in competitive play. We found an effective and cheaper version of the strategy that replaced Agromar. The key card is Zilliux. In addition you will need 4 epic cards. The deck's performance remains stable even at high ranks. The only drawback is the low popularity of this build. In terms of price to performance ratio, this deck scored almost 60 points.
Before we continue, we want to express our boundless gratitude to our sponsors.
Dear friends, your help is invaluable. We do everything possible to make our videos unique and useful.
We will be grateful for any support. Your hits on the bell icons and like button, comments, subscription to the channel and of course sponsorship motivate us and provide the opportunity to create more new content.
Thank you for your activity, and now let's continue. The Mage received 2 decks on our top. Elemental Mage is more of an off-meta archetype, although its popularity is impressive. This is the only conditionally free deck on our list. A win rate of just above 50% is a very good result for such a cheap build. Unfortunately, due to the lack of an internet connection, I was not able to test this deck in practice. For this reason I will wait for your feedback in the comments, but this option looks interesting.
Odyn Warrior has an efficiency factor of 64%. This version of the meta strategy is very popular and effective. Alternative builds use Reno and Fizzle. This allows them to remain more effective at higher ranks, although these builds are less popular. Overall, this build has impressive effectiveness, but at high ranks the win rate gradually decreases. The core of this archetype is also one of the options to choose from for new and returning players.
Sludge Warlock has a slightly higher efficiency factor. This is one of the main meta archetypes of the previous expansion, but even now it remains relevant, although not as influential. The overall win rate is 66%, but at high ranks it drops to 60%. The main disadvantage is the relatively high cost for budget decks. You will need 2 legendary and 4 epic cards. You can play the version without Symphony of Sins, but your win rate may be lower.
At the top of the list is Shopper Demon Hunter. This is a completely sick archetype that terrorizes the metagame. The strategy is the most effective and incredibly popular. I hate this strategy with all my robotic heart. I don't want to believe that the developers originally intended the archetype to work this way.
Your main goal is to make Windows Shopper cheaper with new weapons and find Magtharion in the general demon pool. If you succeed, then your win rate has a chance to increase significantly. If not, then your chances drop and you have to rely on subsequent cards and your opponent's bad luck. Overall, this archetype is not expensive, but we have identified the deck with the highest efficiency factor. This version replaces Ziliax and the Going Down Swinging spell, which has become useful again after a long break.
Adding these cards to your deck will further increase your already insane performance numbers. But we have to assure you that on April 16th, along with the big Battlegrounds update, the archetype will be nerfed.
That's all the decks for today. For the first time in a long time, the Demon Hunter was back on top.
We can't wait to hear your thoughts on our experimental approach. Do you find this deck review format useful?
And most importantly, what do you think about the current state of affairs in the metagame? Is the design of the Shopper Demon Hunter strategy interesting? Share your thoughts in the comments and join the polls in the community tab. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really hope that we will have the opportunity to get in touch in the next video.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.